Today, it's going to be just a different kind of show. We are going to talk about all of the news of the week that concerns Black education. Stay with us. This is Freedom Friday, and you're still not free. Welcome, friends and family, to another episode of Freedom Friday. It is Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after an hour with Sharif El-Mekki and me. I am Chris Stewart, better known as Citizen Stewart on Twitter. You can find me at Citizen Stewart on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Everywhere where there is somebody, I am there. Okay, well, that sounded like a lot, but good morning, Sharif. How you doing, brother?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, bro. Good to see you. Happy Friday.
You too, man. Yeah, happy Friday. Like, it's a rough start for me today. Just so people know, for background purposes, this is one of those weeks where being an adult caught up with me. And even in the plotting and the planning of this show, it just like came up like, pow, guess what? It's here. You're supposed to do this now. So I'm glad we are able to still make it today. I called it the Hodgepodge show. I thought that we would just talk about some news of the day, some things that are on our mind for this week in no particular order. But first, let's do a check-in with you just to see, how has your week been? How's the work going? How is it saving Black children this week?
Yeah, man, it's it's going really well. This is my fun time as not even going to say recovering school principal, because I don't look at it as like a place to recover from, but I am recovering recovering from the separation of being in a school for a quarter of a century. When you have 900 people every day in your community that you're like engaging with, right? Almost 800 students and staff and families like that. It had a certain rhythm in my life, you know what I mean? In the mornings, in the afternoons, or at lunch, visiting class. It was like all day, all the stimuli. And then to leave there and transition, it's like, it's so quiet. Like, what's happening? What's going on? Fortunately, I'm so grateful, like in our work at the center, we have so much student facing space. And so, as I mentioned before, 142 Black and brown teacher apprentices who are in high school and college, and they didn't go to McDonald's, Enterprise Car Rentals, Starbucks. They said, hey, we're open to teaching. And so they're being paid to learn how to teach.
Wow.
So to have 142 is just so exciting. As I mentioned, my own two youngest children are in it, and they love it. So I get feedback all the time from them, their experience, from staff, from the other folks. So it's it's been really good. Next week's the last week, sadly, last week for the summer.
That must be hard to do something that's so important in the summer, like, that takes a lot of planning or whatnot, and then start to see it winding down.
Yeah, man. It's like, oh man, this is the next to last week. Oh no, when you first started, you got like 6 weeks seems like a long time, but now you're like, oh my gosh, next week is the end. And this week, but also grateful that, we have the student facing stuff, but also was accustomed to working with teachers. And this week, in partnership with Ed Trust, we have this policy and advocacy convening. 7 state teams: California, Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, Illinois, and of course, Pennsylvania. So there are 8 to 10 team members for each state. And most of them have to be teachers. And so they are here in Philadelphia for the past 3 days. Today is the last day. And they're coming up with state plans to how do they increase teacher diversity in their states? What are the policy levers? What is the grassroots practitioner, policy maker, coalitions that need to be formed? What are the strategies? So they're going through all of that. And so it's been real. I can't wait to see what they've developed. So they're kind of like group sessions, breakout sessions, state team sessions, and then coming together. So watching these folks across 7 states work on similar but also dissimilar issues, but all rallying around this issue, like how do we increase our teacher diversity, both recruitment, retention, as well as support. So that's been this week. So it's been incredibly busy, gratifying, amazing. But yeah, we in it to fight, man. We in the fight the righteousness of the struggle.
When you think about that fight to get more teachers of color, specifically Black teachers, and even more specifically
Hmm.
Black male teachers. Yep, we need Black teachers.
Yes,
I
sir.
think
Yes,
it's
sir.
so hilarious. I got my child. Y'all sent me that shirt, and he
Right.
wears that shirt. He'll just come walking downstairs. I'll feel some kind of way because I feel like he's wearing it as a message to us somehow in the household, right?
Listen, this is a student statement, right? Like this isn't
Yeah.
like something the center came up with. These are our high school apprentices. They all have to do a social activism, or we call it educational activism project. And
Hmm.
so in their small group, this was they're supposed to come up with a campaign, how to talk about what they are demanding, what they want, what they need. And they came up with this. And my bias, I thought they were going to come up with some, you know, gimmicky, like just some wild rap or something. I was like, that, like no rap, no stand on your head, break dancing. No, we need to, it was like, no, straightforward, straight shot. We want people to hear it. So yeah, it's directly from high school youth, this campaign.
Actually, I love
So
the
your
shirt.
kid wearing it.
He wears it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you got a kid in rural Minnesota who is wearing your shirt that says we need Black teachers. Now, what I need him to maybe not do is maybe not wear that to school at the beginning of the school year, maybe towards the end after his grades are set.
It's like they're like, oh, you know what I mean? The principal, like, yo, what you say? Like
He's got a Black principal and never has had a Black teacher.
okay.
Matter of
All
fact,
right, yeah.
the 3 that I have right now. So my last 3 that are through, they're no, not a single Black teacher.
Mm.
Black principal at 2 of the schools, and he has brought with him. Now, this is what's interesting. So we're further out from the cities, from the Twin Cities, from Minneapolis. They hired a principal from Minneapolis to work in our district, and he used his network. So he brought with him probably about 5, 6 Black teachers, all males. All males with him. So this is one strategy, like hire somebody that's got a network.
Well, that's a network. Yeah.
Yeah, hire somebody with a cohort. And then
Mm-hmm.
he brought a couple of deans and aides also with him, other workers with him.
Yeah,
So they still
diversify
have a
the
network.
staff,
So,
right? Like, yeah, like I
yeah.
mean, that's a strategy. I mean, there's research that shows that you know, uh Black and brown leaders will tend to hire, recruit, support, and retain Black and brown teachers and staff. So that makes sense. And it's a slightly higher percentage of Black principals than Black
Hmm.
teachers, also,
Hmm.
interestingly enough. So not surprised. Not
Yeah,
surprised.
it's interesting with once you start getting into admin, you do
Hmm.
find more Black people, period.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the
yeah.
classroom that's the problem. And
Hmm. Hmm.
listen, we've talked about this before. So, I want to say this thing, which is, I've said it before and you don't have to respond to it, but it's just like, when you're making somebody the offer of, hey, you're bright, you're talented, you're in college, you're among the few that have made it here, you have great things ahead of you. How would you like a job that starts at $32,000 to $35,000 a year? Sounds like a bad dream, right? Like, even if you love it, it just seems like, meanwhile, you got corporate America and all kinds of other, industries and others who want to diversify. They really do. Like companies really are out here in an arms race to try and get diversity. So
Hmm.
you might have 4, 5, 6 offers if you're a talented person who's doing well in college and you are well networked. You are probably getting multiple offers. A teaching one doesn't seem like it would be.
And they're way above 35,000,
What's that?
and way above
Oh yeah, those
35K.
other ones are
Yeah.
way. I mean, 35 are way above 35K. Profit sharing, 401k, travel, humane benefits, that whole thing. Like kind of like a life where you can come home on Friday night and not feel like you want to drink a box of wine, right? Like like.
Well, I would say the folks that I've met who've been career changers who had that lifestyle,
Yeah,
they said they were drinking a box of wine every night, and they
really.
they didn't feel fulfilled. They felt like they didn't feel like their work was as meaningful as their heart desired.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
felt like they weren't connected to the organization's mission. And that's why when we're meeting career changes, they're like, I had all of that, and I still felt like I had a hole in my soul, you
Yeah.
know, particularly if they feel like if they, people got to find the right seat on the right bus, right? Like that's what it's all about. What's the right seat on the right bus, and that's why we partner with folks like the Teacher Salary Project, right? People
Yeah.
go to teachersalaryproject.org. Please sign the petition. We firmly believe that teacher salaries should be raised significantly, and just to start off. And if they are effective and highly effective, then their salary should be 100K, like
Yeah.
just easy, like without even blinking an eye. That's what it should be. So
Do you ever find the work a little bit dispiriting when you're not promoting this work? Like when you're by yourself, you're just Sharif at home without anybody listening or watching, and you think to yourself, damn, getting from 2% black male teachers nationally to
mhm.
anything reasonable. I mean, what's the total percentage? We say 2% black males. What's the total
Yeah,
black males?
about 7%.
7%?
Yeah,
Yeah.
7 point
So it's like
whatever. Yeah.
5% black women, 2% black
Mhm.
men. That that just feels daunting.
Yeah, but you know what? Yes, and when you see places like places like Connecticut, and they moved up a couple of percentages just by being smart about policy. So here, their Department of Ed, and it's something that Ed Trust was sharing the other day with the folks here at this conference. They just looked at who were all the people that were certified that weren't teaching. It ended up being 750 black and brown teachers who were certified, like they could be hired the next day. Like they had graduated, they had passed their praxis, they had their certification, and they were like, they're not teaching. So they just sent an email to all of them, like, hey, we would love to have you. 250 of them ended up working, like coming to orientation or the job fair the next week. Right? Like that was just a simple thing. Like, who are they using data, reaching out, acting like you actually are looking for people, and 250, ended up, just suppose every play. Like, I think there are so many different ways to be smart about it. So I don't really get discouraged, and if I do, it's fleeting. It's not, you know, it doesn't last long. I mean, I'm pragmatic. So I'm not, I don't get too high. I don't get too low. I pretty try to stay, in the middle, no matter if things are going well. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And then move on. If things are going poorly, I'm like, oh, all right, let me get my bearings, make some prayers. All right, let's move on. But I'm blessed to, I think I'm kind of in the middle for, you know me, like even personally, I'm not too high, not too low, so wherever I am, it doesn't last. Even if it's something exciting, I don't stay there either. So it's like I don't. It's the work, man. I think the work invigorates me. So even
Yeah.
if it's a complex issue, I like trying to figure out, like, how do we solve this? Like, how does the puzzle fit together? How do we address and tackle? So I do enjoy problem solving. I enjoy playing chess. I enjoy those type of things. That's what is invigorating and stimulating. Then you add this idea of racial justice, and educational justice campaign like that. That it both makes my blood boil. Like I'm operating in a sense of rage a lot of times about the injustice,
Hmm.
but then also when you see your black youth and your black community and just allies, not the allies who just agree with you, right? As the brother was saying today in one of the things, ally ain't somebody who just agrees with you. Ally is somebody who is doing something with you. And so when you have that type of community, that's pretty invigorating too. And they're not going to let you get too depressed and stay there, right? Like they may say, oh,
Yeah.
you fell down, but hey, here's a hand. We're gonna lift you up and help you out. So I think being in community, I've never, and I realize this is a blessing. A lot of people do not have this. I've never, across 30 years in education, Chris, I've never not been in community with others.
Mm.
I just
That's
never,
a
I haven't
huge lesson.
experienced that. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
and I can imagine like that question, like, do you feel low? If I wasn't in community, oh yeah, I'd probably be downright depressed all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so I do recognize that I've always operated from a sense of, privilege, deep privilege.
Sharif with his black privilege. Friends and
Yeah.
fam who are listening and watching to the show, we are in the middle of a hodgepodge show of the Eight Black Hands version, Ed Post version of the Freedom Friday show on Friday. So if you have any thoughts, concerns, any news items, please drop them in the comments, and we will get to them. What's been on your mind this week with news of the week? I have a couple of items that I would love to talk about, but returning to this part with Sharif, I know a few people in education advocacy, education, whatever you want to call it, education activism, policy, whatever. We have this network of people. It's not just a few who are starting to burn out on even the ancillary work. So like being a teacher, there are people who have left or are leaving. There are teachers that are burnt out. They're like, I'm done. I'm done with all the nonsense, the rules, the parents, the whatever, all the stuff. Just take all the things. You can take this job, you can shove it, right? But the people who fight for like policies or to build new schools or whatnot, there's also among them a group that are constantly in conversation. Man, I might not be doing this a year from now. Man, I'm not, and for me, I get it. Like I feel it. Like, I have just within the last month, I have been through a few things, right? Just all because I want to advocate for Black children with a social justice lens. Because of that, I know what it is to be targeted. I know what it is to be targeted multiple times. I know what it is to have people try and get you fired or try to get money taken away from you or to get you defunded, all because they don't like what you say, right? They don't like, and for a lot of people, you could go and do something else, and that could not be your life, right? Like my
Without
laptop
the
doesn't
added
shut at
stress.
night.
Yeah.
Yeah, without the added stress and the being drugged, being dragged by people and all that type of stuff. My only solace is one, I feel like I'm built for this. So that's the first. I feel like I was born to do this, right? To battle for children.
Ain't nothing like a sense of purpose, bro. It's
I'm so
nothing
purposed
like
about
it.
it. I'm purposeful about it in that, like, I know that I'm supposed to be doing this. Like, I know that my voice is my weapon of choice. My intellect is the thing that I'm supposed to be sharing. And I know that I have the ability, the powers of analysis and words. I'm going to use it for children. God's not going to give me that and have me not use it. So God gave me that. That's what I'm doing. So when people come for me, I feel like, oh, I'm built for this though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're used to dragging people, but I will make a little bit of a project of you too. So like if so let's get ready to rumble. Let's do this, right? I don't think that everybody has that clarity of this is
That
what they're supposed to
clarity.
be doing.
Yeah.
That clarity of,
Yeah.
and it's hard for them. So I want to run a story by you because this is right up your alley. It's a news item of the week, and it pertains to our good friends down south. And I shouldn't say down south. Our friends in Florida are always doing interesting things. And the interesting thing that I think pertains to your work is Florida to hire veterans and their spouses without teaching experience, right?
And their spouses, like this, and their spouses, like just like.
So, as somebody who tries to build the pipeline to make it easier to get more people into the classroom, I would think, Sharif, this is a win because there's lots of Black males in the military. We could just bypass everything else and get Black males and their spouses into the classroom. Why isn't this a good thing, man?
Yeah, man. I was hoping. Well, I kind of knew, but I was definitely hoping this would be one of the issues of the week because when I saw you post this, I was fired up. I had just recently been having side conversations about this and others, and I think it's one of the things that's a little fearful, right? And mind you, like this is why teachers have to be at policy tables. Not just afterthought, not reading in the paper, but actually informing and leading the work. Just having so a couple of issues that come up here, and one, this isn't like a anti-veteran kind of thing, because I actually know some veterans who, after they left the service, became teachers, but they learned how to teach. And I think if you had something like this, if they were bringing them in to be residents, and I think some of this is they have to have 60 college credits, right? So it's like they have to have something. right? 60 college credits. I don't remember how much that is before you graduate. I don't know where that puts people. Is that a junior or sophomore? I don't know. But they
Mhm.
have something. But suppose this was the emergency certification and they were a teacher resident
I think
as they were
60 is
continuing.
like a AA degree. 62, I think, is an AA
Is
degree.
okay. So they're close
Yeah,
to
so they're close
getting
to an
to an
AA, yeah.
associate's degree, right? And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
imagine this, and teachers like, yo, you can't just have them leading a classroom with an associate's degree that may not have had anything to do with human growth and development, child psychology, content expertise. But suppose they're with a mentor teacher that's a really dope teacher, and they're learning, they're back in school, and they're given scholarships so they can go to school for free, get this, get this expertise in a particular content, special ed, just the other things necessary, like how to teach, how to lead, the cultural proficiency that's necessary, and you're with a mentor teacher throughout the time. So you're not the you're it's like being a medical resident, like you would be a teacher resident and learning from an expert for a couple of years. I'm like, man, this will be bad. The other piece that I'm worried about though, like how many of them have when I read all the stuff about veterans and the PTSD that they have,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
higher rates of suicide that they have, and then it's like, yeah, just come, like, right, like what's the screening, what's the support, what's I think when you're in servicing communities and servicing people, humans like you have to pay attention to your mental health, right? Because the vicarious trauma that you are might likely to be exposed to, these folks are coming in from who knows what type of situation. And this is just the research that we're reading about. Oh yeah, PTSD spikes and blah blah blah, and then it's like, oh, go in front of these kids. I'm like, whoa, we might want to think about this. But then you add the spouses, like, like just like, yeah, who are you? What's your qualification to teach? Well, my husband used to bomb Iraq,
Yeah.
so that means I can. I'm like, I'm just trying to understand like how all of this fits together, man. But the part of saying, like, even now, and you see it across the country, Florida's not the only one, but I
Yeah.
love the Bugs Bunny sawing off Florida thing. I think that's the older I get, the more appropriate that 70s cartoon, at least that part
Mhm,
of it. There's a lot of
mhm.
Bugs Bunny stuff that was problematic, but um, around the country, you see people are, even in the name of diversity, lowering the bar, which I think is so disrespectful. It's like, oh, yeah, we want more black and brown. So you know what? We don't care if they know how to teach math or reading or lead kids, blah blah blah. We just
Mhm,
want them,
mhm,
and I think that's dangerous. Like elevate again, center the students. What do students need? They need
mhm.
highly qualified, highly committed, highly competent individuals, and then look at, are the ways that we're bringing people on, is that furthering that or is it distancing us from it?
Yeah, I feel like, people are not paying attention to what is happening, period, with work and with workers in places. And you are having younger and younger people, less and less educated or experienced people doing jobs that used to require more qualification of any sort, including like fast food or, this is how I know I'm old, right? Like
Mhm.
you go into Chipotle now, all hell is breaking loose. I don't know if
Oh
people
yeah,
have been paying
like
attention.
what kind of help?
Oh, Lord have mercy. The staffing situations in a lot of these places now has really gone to hell.
Mm.
And i- it's noticeable if you're a person who pays attention to these things. Service, and there's a pandemic of bad service, bad attitudes. The
Mhm.
work is not getting done like it used to. They're reducing hours in some chain stores and in places like, Chipotle and others. In some of their stores, they just can't keep people. And, they're getting
Mm.
younger and younger. And sometimes, you're walking to some of these places, it's like 4 or 5, 15-year-olds and
Yeah, the
60-year-olds.
manager's
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've
And
seen
there are
that.
consequences to this. I don't think,
Listen, I've
so
had to tell sometimes employees, I'm like, yo, you don't curse in the professional setting. They're like, who? I'm like, I'm just telling you, as a customer, you
right.
don't scream profanity to your coworker and I've given them feedback. I'm like, I don't know who you mean. I don't care. It's out of love. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like I cringe when I'm an old head too. I don't like hearing youth cussing around adults. Like it does. It doesn't make me feel good.
And in
And
your work behavior,
yeah, it's just like, and
you
give them
know,
that feedback. But I look at that as community. I know people are like, don't say nothing to them. I can't
oh
help it.
no, say something. I just said something 2 days ago to a young man who was trying to impress a young woman. They were both working at a grocery store, and I could see all their colleagues who also were wearing the little grocery store vest that they wear, or whatnot, were really annoyed with them because they weren't doing anything. They were walking around basically trying to date and talk loud and singing, loudly and blah blah blah. And here I am pushing my cart through. I'm like, I'm old. I'm
Yeah,
old Negro. I'm about to have a conversation with y'all. Young man.
young
Let's have a
man,
conversation
let me
about
holler
this.
at you, fam.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's
Because
out of love, right? Like
it is out of love.
you
It's
know,
out
they,
of love and my own peace of mind because I want to be a customer in a place that don't have ignorance. But I only saying all this just to say there's a general, in my mind, this is just one guy talking, uh, change in the situation with employment and labor and expectations. And right now we're getting more into the warm body territory, at Chipotle and these other
uh,
places. I don't even care. Just like come
mhm.
in. You could all
Come
things that
as
used
you
to matter
will, as you
before.
may.
Yeah,
Yeah,
come as you may. The one place where that makes no damn sense is the classroom. The idea, the idea that we should have the Chipotle attitude about classrooms, like, oh, was your husband in the military? Oh, girl, for true? Oh yeah,
for
we got a
true.
job for you. Yeah, for true. Oh shit, we got a job for you. Can you come down? Can you start on Tuesday? We got 31 second graders who are not reading well right now.
Mm,
And we just need somebody to be in the classroom with them during the day. Can you do it?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
listen, who was your husband in? Oh,
yeah.
National Guard? I don't know. Does that qualify? Yeah. I think it works. I think it works. You should come in here and teach these kids. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
After first of all, Sharif, after all those years of talking about like all the research from Eric Hanashek and others about the importance of having just one quality teacher, you set you on a
and
different
that's
trajectory, or
trajectory.
having two, in a row does something, but having two bad teachers in a row put you on a different. We have years and years and years and years of preaching that language to the public. And now we're just like, listen, if your husband was in the military, come teach. Come on.
Yeah. And this is the other part that pisses me off because there have been schools who wanted to hire like community teachers, right? Like people who aren't necessarily formally trained, but have a body of work in our communities, right? And no, they may not be in there to teach reading, but suppose we're like, yo, this is he's a master drummer. And we want a drum class in our school. And we want
Mm,
them to be able to teach drumming and syncopation and cadence and rhythm, right? Like we want them to teach that because they are experts in our community. They are the ones that open up our festivals. They're the ones that are, at the park, and all these years we would not have been able to hire them, for anything
mhm.
more than an after school program. We would not have been allowed to make them teacher of the record, even though it wasn't teaching the science of read. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like, hey, we're bringing you in to teach algebraic equation. No, it was like, you're an expert at this or this art or like whatever it is, rhetoric. Like I know folks who are amazing like we could not have brought any of these community educators as we recognize them into our schools and hire them.
Mm.
But these folks, they can say, like, oh, yeah, you know what? We'll subject your kids to anything that we want to. But when we say, like, this will actually be good, these people, these community educators and activists will actually be fantastic for our school, fantastic for our school community. They're like, no, you can't hire. Like, you were literally get fired if you even try. Like, there was no mechanism to get them hired in the first place. To me, that is another huge aspect of all of this.
Mm.
Again, not allowing us to do what we know will benefit our children. But here they come with these bright ideas.
Mhm. That
Um,
sounds like a tension, though. Like the system is bureaucratic, and in many ways, you want to loosen up some things and be flexible. Like we need
mhm.
more flexible ways to get to our goals. At the same time, there's flexibility, and then there's like calling, eight brothers off the corner saying, "Hey, you want to teach?" Right? Like this thing around in Florida. I don't know how it's going to go. Maybe it turns out just fine. Who knows? Maybe we start learning that we put way too much credit in schools of ed and college of education or whatnot. I don't believe that, but I'm open
Mhm.
to being wrong if I'm proven wrong. Like if this turns out to go well and fine, and we learn that we can just grab military people and put them in classrooms. Listen, you're not gonna like this, but some of your classrooms need somebody from the military in there because some of your children need a military person in there. Like, listen, not my children,
Not my child, but
not
some
my
of y'all
child. No,
kids.
no, no. Yeah,
But
some of y'all
listen,
kids need
one of
that.
my oldest son, his sixth grade teacher, and she was one of those teachers. My son had a couple teachers um, uh, who were just amazing, and I was just like, his first second grade teacher. I think she looped with it. He went to Penrose Elementary. I was like, man, I hope she loops with him forever, or I hope his
Mhm,
next
mhm,
teacher is
mhm.
just like her. She was phenomenal, career educator. I mean, just amazing. Like that's who I wanted, and that's who I wanted for anybody's child. Like that's who I wanted. She reminded me of, this the teachers I had as an elementary school, and then he got to sixth grade, and then he had another one. I was like, man, if he could have a teacher this caliber forever. Now, sixth grade teacher, she was a former military person. Her
Mm,
name is Miss Abbott. She's the teacher that Quinta named Abbott Elementary after.
oh, wow.
So that was my son's sixth grade teacher. And she was amazing. And she was a former military person. I didn't know that when we first met her, till back to school night that she shared her history. But I was like, oh, all right. Like, and I could see it, right? Like just her,
Mhm, mhm.
how she thought, how her organization, blah, 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 and she's amazing. I mean, and congratulations, Miss Abbott. She retired this year after 30 plus years leading classrooms. And mind you, my oldest son is 30. He had her in sixth grade. She was at the same school community.
Mhm, mhm.
Same school community, Hamilton down in West Philly, 57th and Spruce, something like that. She's been there all this time. So imagine like just this pillar. But anyway, I bring her up not only because she's dope, but because she's a veteran.
Yeah, she's a veteran, but she's our teacher.
Yeah. And
Like, she's not a veteran's wife who's being given
yeah.
a bunch of second and third graders. Let's stay in Florida for a minute because
Do we have to?
Florida seems to be outdoing themselves. So, I saw on
Oh
TikTok,
wow.
a teacher on TikTok who was like, "Y'all not gonna believe what's going on right now." I have, and she was talking about like days until she starts her class, and she's got a day of getting her classroom set up and ready, a day of getting all her like whatever. She was just talking about her planning things, and she
Mhm.
has just been notified that her school district is demanding that they all pull all of their classroom library books entirely, every single one, so that a library technician can vet the books to make sure that they are fine for the new draconian, authoritarian, 1984 style, uh, uh, you know, thought system control, like thought control stuff. That's what they're doing right now. So let's make sure none of the books have anything in it that we don't want, that we,
Wow.
as a small group of political ideologues and religious folks, have decided that nobody should have,
Mhm.
including the people who aren't political right wing Christian ideologues and Christo fascists.
Right.
So,
Right.
so the Christo fascists have taken over the system. They have a governor who, Ivy League governor, who does the folksy Trump thing, and by that I mean just racism, and uh, but it's having real implications. You have an actual teacher who's trying to get ready to teach children for the year and set up her classroom, who now has to spend time not doing that and not
Mm.
thinking, how am I going to be good this year as a teacher with my
Yeah.
kids? How am I going to be organized? How am I going to make sure that I stay on track and that, blah, blah. That's not the thing. Oh, I got to pull all of our books off the shelves. So, and interrupt my time of doing what I should be doing to do that. So that we can have this kind of like, I don't even know what to call it, this dystopian system of, you know, um, controlling what
Yeah.
teachers could teach. And
Yeah.
so what do you say about this one?
Yeah.
Classroom
Yeah.
without books. Florida teachers told to remove classroom libraries for their review.
Yeah. No, I mean it's and then the thing about it, like if we connect all of this, right? Like this is I hope folks in the audience, if you have not read Fugitive Pedagogy, you should. It captures a lot of like there's a direct line between this and other spaces where it's not only removing, but knowing for certain what books you couldn't even put in the first place, right? And like
Mhm,
that being
mhm,
heavily policed, and observations weren't to see how well you're teaching and learning. It was all about making sure you weren't teaching and kids weren't learning anything outside of what a white supremacist catalog was telling you to teach. So there's a direct line to that. I'd also say, what, and then I'll get to this particular article in how many folks voluntarily make sure that their kids don't have access to anything outside of the a white supremacist catalog as well, right? So there's some folks who have no problem. There's some educators who actually have no problem with this whatsoever, and they were doing this without government support
mhm,
or
mhm,
politician support. They were the educational Karen, so to speak, and making sure that none of this, like, oh, that shouldn't be there, this shouldn't be there, whatever. And then the actual, and just even that clip, like, folks don't have libraries right now. People should be thinking about, how do I teach and learn better? And folks are now removing you know all the books that just don't fit into the white supremacist narrative, the historical accuracy, teaching truth, all of those things, and just this constant bombardment, right? And so a teacher makes thousands of decisions a day. They need to be experts. They need to be confident in their craft. All of these things, and this reminds me of that list that you read out a couple months ago when you were in Philly, and what was that, Indiana, where they had all these lists of words, right? And in Texas, we like all these phrases that you can't use. Just
mhm.
imagine, like, you already have thousands of things that you're thinking about, and decisions, and how to call, and how to do this, how to do that. I'm saying, like, call on students, and how to do it, how to pull, how to share, how to sparse information down. And now you also have to second guess everything else, right? Like all the things, and just how hesitant people will become, how fearful people will become, how less confident. It's like, when you're talking about, like, all the things that are running,
Mhm,
you once said, like, the computer, your head and thinking, there's all the, like a computer, all the things running in the background. This
mhm.
is added things that teachers and educators are running in their background. And so, like,
So,
what added pressure is that?
to your point about outlawed words, this is, Wisconsin. Government
Wisconsin.
bans words seems like a free speech issue. Seems like so
Seems like, perhaps.
you have a state government that was seeking to outlaw very specific words in education and in schools. And the headline is, "This is how you know the media is complicit in the
Mhm.
decline of Western civilization." Government bans words seems like a free speech issue. No, girl, for true, really, does it? Does it seem? Here are the words that. Here's a list of the words that they were proposing
Yeah, I'm looking
to
at this, man. That's
ban.
just like, that's by 8 a.m. in the morning. I've used half of these words already. Like
You
every
know,
morning by 8, I've used half these words. You know what I mean?
so this is where we are just in general, when we keep letting things like this go by and happen and not pretend like or pretend like they are not major and crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The social emotional learning is it's a term of art. It's not a political term. It's a whole school of scholarship that has practical application to daily teaching and learning and operation of schools. To just say that we just can't say this thing, that is a whole ass part of the pedagogical infrastructure of schooling, is ridiculous. It's just nuts.
Mhm.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, this is like, we can't even talk about diversity and equity no more. We sick of that.
Mhm.
Culturally responsive teaching. Come on, man. Think of some of these as like the ones like anti-racism are the ones that they're really shooting for. Abolitionist teaching. It's funny that you would outlaw something that comes out of an author's book, but Dr. Patina loves. We want to do more than survive
Survive, right?
is where you get this concept from. So they're just
Mhm.
outlawing her. Period.
Yeah.
uh you know Colorism, like, so if I wanted to teach a lesson on colorism, which, let me give you a very good quick lesson on colorism. Dove, the company that does so
Mhm.
many commercials in the United States about body positivity, and they have big women and small women and tall women and women with freckles and all different colors and shapes and sizes and whatnot, is also made by the exact same company that makes skin whitening cream in other markets across the world, where they run
Mhm.
commercials where they show a person who is black in the beginning who uses their cream, becomes white, and then is very successful. That's how they market it. So you
Mhm.
can't even teach that as a class or in a class. Like, guys, let's talk about how marketing works, blah, blah, blah. Or today we're going to do the Dove, campaign and blah, blah, blah. And what do you think about their connection to colorism? Nope.
No,
No, no,
can't do that.
we want that outlawed.
And look at it. Wait, wait, go back up for a second. This is how like crazy. Don't pedagogy, but not critical pedagogy. Like like don't think too deeply. We don't want any intellectual rigor in your pedagogy. Just do it. And decentering whiteness. How dare you decenter us? Like, what's the like?
Exactly.
You want to be fired? Decenter us and see what happens. Like, this is crazy.
Internalized racism, internalized white supremacy. This is, to me, this is like where that you are taking something to the nth degree and you're just seeing if you can get away with it,
Mhm.
and you're going for it. If you gave me, like, if I was a legislator in a legislator,
Mhm.
let me get these right. And you said, well, Chris, for 24 hours, you could just do whatever you damn well please or whatnot. I would start writing law. The president must be black. Um,
Just
we are painting the White House rainbow colors. I would just have a list of them. I'll just go for it. Like,
just
and
go all out. They
well, I
blue
mean,
skied it. They blue skied it.
listen,
Moonshot, right? Like they did a racist moonshot.
you have a guy somewhere who for years listened to Rush Limbaugh in his ear every day. And Rush Limbaugh told him for years, you are under attack by the other people, those other ones. And you're the only person that all of them hate together. Like you're the victim. As a white male, you're the victim. And they're trying to invade and take over what's yours, your birthright. And you can't even talk about it. Even if
Mhm.
you said it, which is why you have to keep listening to me every day in your car
Yeah,
and
yeah.
shaking your fist and feeling self-righteous because you surely, as manager of the little store you're going into or the insurance agent or whatever, you can't talk about it, but you can listen to me every day.
I'll
So they
talk
went,
about it for you.
I'll talk about it for you. I'll get a microphone made of gold because I'm profiting so much on talking for you
Mhm.
and saying the things you want to say because you mad. When you get to work and you sit next to Kenya or somebody else and you don't like the way she says a thing or blah 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 or whatnot, you can't do anything about it because you know how they are.
Because they used to drink
Just
a
as
beer,
soon as
grab
there's
a noose, right? When they got
right,
mad, they drink a beer, grab
right,
a noose. Now it's
right.
like, hey, where do we, how do we do this now? They got
That's a
the
good
Russian.
point. They used to be able just to have immediate type of reaction and just to be
Mhm.
able to handle things. Civil rights and the civil rights movement and all of the changes made them impotent in a way.
Mhm.
And they never stopped feeling that impotent. They tried to make peace with it. They tried to live with it for a while. And yeah, they tried to do the civil rights thing and all that type of nonsense. But at some point, there were people who came along and started saying to them, no, man, you built all this. You own this. This is your birthright, and these other people are taking it from you, the mud people, the insignificant people. Oh, come on, that they're not qualified to do anything, and they're taking your position, your job, blah blah blah. They heard that on repeat. Started with just right-wing media in general, and it eventually ended up in talk radio for
Mhm.
years and years and years, and then it eventually got a whole ass TV network for years and years and years. And if you watch that, that's like white supremacy central. That
Mhm.
is like,
Mhm.
I mean, come on, like,
Yeah.
just I'm listening to that all day long. Eventually, where that ends up and where I'm going with this is eventually where that ends up in my mind is that if you get the opportunity to pass a prohibition on all the things you don't want to hear nothing about no more.
Mhm.
I don't want to hear about microaggressions, multiculturalism, neo-segregation, normativity, oppressor versus the oppressed. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. You got to stop teaching our kids that there's only two kinds of people, the oppressed and the oppressors, and that they're all victims or they're oppressors. Well, I got to stop teaching that. There's no such thing as patriarchy, racial healing. Come on, who needs to heal from race? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where this comes from in my mind. I'm just one guy talking, but that's
No.
where I think this comes from, and they want it to be in schools.
Yep. Absolutely. Because they recognize the power of education and the power. You know what Steve Biko say. The most potent weapon in the hands of the enemy is the mind of a child, right? Like, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's a piece. And then, and you talked about like the if people ignore it and the lack of vigilance. And people just like, oh, that's that's just how it is. Oh, that's just it's just like we can't do anything about it, right? Like we talked about a little bit of this on Sunday, right? Like people removing the power
Hmm.
that they actually have, the vigilance that we should be operating from, understanding the righteousness of our struggle. It reminds me of Asada Shakur. She said something like, people would get used to anything. The less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows, right? And after a while, people just think oppression is the normal state of things. And to become actually free, that means you have to be acutely aware of when they're trying to enslave you.
Hmm.
And if you
Hmm.
ever just start relaxing and just like, oh, things are fine, or oh, we're past this, or things are better, right? Like that's how these things, next thing you know, you look up and you're like, oh, where all these shackles come from? Like from your sleep,
Hmm.
from your
Hmm.
sleep. So this is I think, people
Which is
shouldn't
why people say
underestimate.
what? This is why people say stay woke.
Stay woke. Stay
Stay
woke.
woke. See, like they tried to take that and turn it
Hmm.
into a negative,
Into
like they
something
do
else.
everything. Like,
Oh yeah.
in the beginning, jazz was just music, but then they made jazz a black thing and they tried to outlaw jazz in many places. Same thing with weed. The reason that weed laws are the way they are right now is because they ran commercials saying that weed makes jazz musicians attack white women and rape white women, blah, blah. So they had this whole reefer madness phase or whatnot. They take anything that's black and turn it into this thing. So it's the same thing with woke. I mean,
Reefer madness.
woke very literally means be aware of the ways in which your government may be treating you unfairly. That is literally what stay woke means. These police systems, these education systems or whatnot, if you don't pay attention, that's what stay woke means. If you don't pay attention, you will end up beneath the feet of one of these systems
Yeah.
and wonder how you got there.
How did I get there?
How did I get there? I didn't know. Like, and it's not like we don't have so many examples like Tuskegee, right? Is a perfect example of you just being trusting and not knowing and not investigating the systems that serve you means that they're doing an experiment on you without you even knowing it,
Hmm.
right? And if it wasn't documented, we would think we were crazy for even thinking that the government would
Oh
do
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, if we said that, it was like, oh, these conspiracy theorists. Oh, you
Hmm.
guys take it
Hmm.
too far. Like,
Hmm.
no, dog, this is real life.
It's documented. We have talked on this show about COINTELPRO.
Yeah, and that's what my mom
And
used to
most
say.
of it
She's
is
like,
so.
the thing about it is, they're so arrogant. They'll tell you exactly what they're doing, even if it's later. They will tell you. Like, you'll be able to find
Mhm,
out. Like
mhm,
they're like
mhm.
that's the level of arrogance. They're like, even if we write it down and people read it, they'll be a little angry. They'll get over it. It's like the abuse of she'll be back. They'll get
Yeah,
over it. They won't care.
that's what when I saw psychiatrists talking about Trump and his way of lying, there's a science to investigating lies and thinking about how
Hmm.
people lie and what they lie about or whatnot. But this idea that you tell the biggest possible lie that's the most absurd and you just keep repeating it so that everything else beneath that becomes believable
Hmm.
is actually a working strategy.
Oh
That
yeah,
that does kind of actually work. I mean, to me, it seems crazy.
it
Like if you
seems
wanted to
crazy,
say,
but yeah.
it seems crazy. If you wanted to run a story tomorrow about there are literally space aliens who are joining gangs and converting gang members to space aliens, and they are abducting people and taking them to another planet. And I say that once, and you say, "Chris, you sound crazy." And I say it twice, and you say, "You keep saying this. You sound crazy." And then I say it then again with some more information and another little piece of something. You're like, "Okay, I don't agree with
Couple of
most of
fuzzy
it."
pictures.
Yeah, you're like, I don't agree with most of this, but that one thing I kind of agree with. I mean, you got me on that one thing. Well, and then before you know it, like if I keep doing this to you, you eventually like say, you end up in a half. Well, I kind of see where you're coming from. That there probably are aliens somewhere. I just don't. I've never seen one, but that's how lying works over time. And us, what I call race lighting, which is basically just racial gaslighting, is basically the idea that we will do the most absurd things to you and do the most absurd things. And it will sting in the beginning. We will act like we will try and pass laws that basically say we have to pull a letter from a Birmingham jail out of schools, right? Well, that sounds absurd. After all these years of civil rights, after everything we've been through, blah, 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 that sounds absurd. And then 2 months later, it doesn't sound as much absurd. And now today, it's just we just talked about a story in Florida where the teachers have to pull every single book out of their classrooms so some librarian can review it. It's no longer absurd now. It's actual real life now. It's what we're living.
Yeah.
Um, Here is another one. Tulsa and Mustang Schools. I would love to have a school system called Mustang Schools. See, I did not go to cool school systems. I would love a school system named Mustang. But the Tulsa Public Schools and another district called the Mustang Schools in Oklahoma have been found in violation of their state accreditation body. The State Board of Education has actually put them on, has said that they have violated the law, which has been passed recently, which is HB 1775, which is their anti-CRT law. And because of that, it has affected their accreditation, which, most people should know that your schools don't get to just be schools. They are, they need to be accredited to be schools. So, but it's interesting enough. Where this came from, in Tulsa's case at least, was they had one teacher who went to a teacher diversity training. And in that training, they were talking about all the ways to understand kids and to make sure that you're making your classrooms welcoming. It was a very watered down version of what most people would normally do. And this is before the law passed. So it's not even really breaking the law. They just wanted to make the example of an urban school district because the teacher complaint was about a training that took place before the law passed, and they still voted 4-2 to downgrade Tulsa Public Schools accreditation to being accredited with a warning, and that if they do it again, there will be an even more grave penalty. Meaning, so one more teacher or somebody doesn't like a lesson and that they think has CRT or something in it. Turns out the teacher who actually made the complaint is a teacher named Amy Cook, a teacher who has been protested by students over her pushing conservative political and religious views in the classroom, including her telling kids that trans kids are sinners and having a prayer portion of her classroom, and going off about the godlessness of schools and blah 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 blah. This is the teacher, Amy Cook, who actually made the complaint that got Tulsa's got them downgraded. Think about the power of one white woman teacher who doesn't like what she's hearing in a training because she's a Christo-fascist who believes that the public schools should be under the control of the God as she sees fit and God how she sees it. She has so much power as an individual white woman that she can make a complaint that gets the entire school district's accreditation with the state put in jeopardy.
Yeah.
That's how the whole CRT movement started. One teacher in Seattle didn't like what he or she was seeing in a training and leaked documents about racial justice training for teachers to Christopher Rufo, who shortly after that was on Fox News and was shortly after that contacted by the President of the United States to start passing executive orders to get CRT out of all public institutions. That's how a movement starts. You can't tell me that you don't understand the focus on white power and white nationalism in the United States if you can't tell me how a black teacher anywhere in the United States who doesn't like something can wake up the next day and have the entire kind of like house of cards tumble down in their favor because they were in tell me where in America where there is a black person who can model this type of
right. You could be a teacher, or a parent or a kid attending KKK middle school, like literally KKK middle school. And you're like, this don't make me feel good. I feel uncomfortable. I want this change. Man, they'll ignore you for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like literally like this. I don't fit this mascot that's wearing a hood and a Confederate flag and is carrying a noose. It makes me feel a little uncomfortable. Deaf ears. But if you say, they said I got to include all kids. They said I can't make, you know what I mean? I can't use my racist and homophobic language in class. Like, how dare they? They got the
This is where
president
there's a
and
power
everybody
differential.
else to run. But listen, this is the modern day lynch mob, right? This is
Mm,
exactly how
mhm,
lynch
mhm,
mobs operate.
mhm,
They Emmett Till in schools. They Emmett
mhm.
Till in educators,
Wow.
right? Little whisper, little lie, little manipulation, and then here they come, galloping full speed without the hoods. They right in these policy in these state houses, right in these courtrooms, right on the on this media and social media, Fox News, etc. And this is what they do. And then you get the other side of the supposedly allies and say, this might be an infringement on free speech.
Lord have mercy.
Maybe. Like
Maybe.
we want to be tentative. We want to use tentative language because we're not quite sure.
Well, they know a
Um,
lot of their people actually agree with this stuff
oh
silently. They
yeah,
don't want to say it, right?
exactly.
Like, I mean, this is happening in some liberal places too. I mean, you're seeing so white power and people who are adjacent to white power are it's a consolidation era now where they're like, no, 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 we need to take the advantages that we can take with power. Now
Mhm.
we need to coerce our way into power. So, like, places like San Francisco. I just wrote about this yesterday. Places like San Francisco, a lot of that is around. There's only 7% black kids in that district, but trying to
Right.
get more black kids into the test-in schools or whatnot, changing some of the rules to get kids into some of the better schools has had kind of white and Asians align with each other to form a right-wing alliance in a liberal city to basically say no, we'll push back on that. No, like these schools aren't for everybody, they're not for you, they're for us, and zero sum. Like, no, all that stuff about diversity and inclusion or whatnot, it all sounds good, but when it gets down to your kid getting the better seat or whatnot, it goes out the window. But what you said is true. A black teacher waking up today saying, I don't want to teach at Robert E. Lee School. I don't know why I should have to. Robert E. Lee was like a traitor to the United States, was a person who fought life and death to keep the United States in slavery. And I don't know that I feel comfortable. My comfort level is not real good with me. I don't even want to teach at Thomas Jefferson. I don't like teaching in schools named after pedophiles. Like that don't make any sense to me. Like, why would I teach in a school of somebody who said that blacks and whites would never ever actually be able to live together and share a country because blacks are inferior by nature and by science? He wrote this.
Hmm.
This isn't something that, and he didn't have to write this because there were other people in his league who didn't agree with him completely, thought he was completely wrong about this or whatnot. So he was it wasn't just a man of the times. He was
Hmm.
a eugenicist by trade, and he was also a pedophile and a rapist. So why would I want to go? It makes me really uncomfortable. We're talking about grooming kids and all that type of stuff. Why would we name a school after a pedophile? That doesn't make
Hmm.
any sense right now. I'm really uncomfortable.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
so uncomfortable with my kids going to that school. I'm really uncomfortable with the way that you're teaching them about the founding of America, even calling them the founding fathers. Whose fathers? Those are my fathers. Are those your
Hmm.
fathers? Shit, whose fathers are those? Those are my fathers. I'm really uncomfortable with you teaching my kids that the founding fathers' words should live on forever without criticism and without revision or without changing, as if they were demigods who just were so smart and so brilliant that they said something for all times that we should keep going back to the original language of. Well, do you remember the original language that they taught was I was 3/5 a person just for counting purposes. I wasn't even really 3/5 of a person. Wow, that makes me uncomfortable too. It makes me really uncomfortable. So maybe we should have something like ethnic studies. We should have diverse curriculum. We should have multiple ways to teach this, because I don't want to make your little white kids learn anything necessarily that maybe you are having a problem with or whatever. Fine. But you at least going to have some negotiations to talk to me about what my child should learn, because I pay taxes. And last time I checked, I don't pay an insignificant amount of taxes.
Hmm.
So I pay my taxes for these schools like everybody else, and I'm uncomfortable, God damn it. Even with the black president, everything that I just said, I have no power to start a goddamn national movement that changes laws immediately to make black kids more comfortable in the public schools, or brown kids, or kids of color, or any kid that has the unfortunate situation of not being the child of two white parents.
Yep.
Power differential. We just don't have to have the power.
100%, man. It's and we have to understand the righteousness of our struggle. We have to understand the tactics that they have continued to use, and whether it's a dog whistle or whether it's an outright blaring of their racist ideologies, that they are, it's not just an adult facing thing. They find that the fastest way to do it is through schools. Like
Hmm.
that's where
Hmm.
children are. And that's the fastest way to get to them. So you figure, what, 50 million students? What better way to continue a white supremacist strategy and ideas than through 50 million children,
Hmm.
curricula, and those who are leading them. So this is
So
the
they
work
got
at
us.
hand. It's the work at hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this has been a hodgepodge show. What did we cover today? So we talked about the fact, just so people joining
They
later,
racist.
recapping or whatnot.
That's
So
what they racist.
they racist. That was
And you better stay
today's
vigilant.
shows.
Stay woke. Yeah.
So to recap, we talked about the need for community when you're going to do the work of trying to advocate for students. We're going to try to advocate in education, because powers that be will come and wear you down. If you're a teacher, there's burnout is real. If you're an administrator, a school leader, or whatever, same thing. Burnout is real for all those groups of people. If you are an advocate or somebody who is constantly battling for children, you will get worn down too. You will have people on both sides of the fence. I have been attacked by the left and I've been attacked by the right. I've had them try to cut off my money and try to get me fired from jobs, and in a couple of cases get me fired from jobs and whatnot. Your feedback to that was, good thing that you're in community with people. And I agree with that 100%. The first time I was ever attacked on these things, I felt very naked and alone. And the very last time, very recently, I felt very surrounded by people who care about my well-being and are in community with me. Like we're in the same, we're part of the same fight, and we got each other's back. And that's a much different feeling. We also talked about Florida and their plan to hire military people and their spouses to come and teach kids, just
And
like
their
the spouses
grandmas.
and their grandmothers.
Your grandma
Yeah,
of a veteran.
you know,
Sign up.
you got a
Show up.
nephew? Just come on in. Just come teach our kids or whatnot, which we basically said was absurd. We also talked about in Florida, and this is happening elsewhere, teachers being asked to pull all the books from classrooms. Um, and if you want any of these links, I'm going to drop them down in the comments so that you can have them. But classroom teachers in Florida being asked to pull every book so that library technicians can go through them all, make sure that they are inspected by the state. The last story we just talked about was Tulsa public schools having their accreditation dropped down because there was one teacher who had one experience she didn't like at one training. And because of that, she complained to the state that it broke the CRT law, and they have now been punished for that, putting the lives of many children on the line because one teacher didn't like something that she experienced in one classroom. Her name is Amy Cook, if you want to look it up. And she's a teacher. She's a conservative, Christo-fascist teacher in Tulsa. Other than that, we appreciate you, friends and family, for coming again. We love your comments. So I've been looking at some of those and reading through some of those. If you have ideas for future shows, let us know. This has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this hour with Sharif El-Mekki and me. We wish you nothing but blessings and for a great week. Go out there and fight for all the kids to have the education that gets them to their highest possible potential, their God-given potential. We will see you next week.